All right, I want to start by giving a special shout out to Sean McPherson over at, is it KBEM? I forget the call
That's
signs
right.
for the jazz station here
Yeah.
in the Twin Cities, formerly with Minnesota Public Radio, but doing really great things over at KBEM. One of my favorite things about Sean is that he throws a great party. So we had a little front yard party he invited us over to over the weekend, and you always, great to connect with local music folks and former colleagues. And
Hmm.
I was hanging out with some folks, and we started talking about the importance and the viability of video game music towards getting more folks back into the concert hall. We started talking shop, at the party.
Always
And
happens.
the conversation quickly moves over into the realm of movie music. And sometimes I just forget that that's an area that a lot of people pay a lot of attention to and have memorable moments with, or, just a great pathway to getting folks into that symphonic, straight up orchestral aesthetic of music. If you're engaging somebody in conversation and they're like, oh, well, what's some movie music that I might not know. We all know the John Williams stuff
Right.
and that all of that. But do you have
That's
any
easy.
movie music tracks that may be less famous but that really come quickly to mind when you think about the power of that genre of Western classical music?
Usually what I'll do is I'll ask one more question, which is name some pop artists that are on the top of your list.
Mm-hmm.
Because if they've ever done any collaboration on a film, then that's a natural pipeline to, move them over to that
Sure.
soundtrack.
Sure.
But there is a film called The Last Emperor with music composed by three different men. There's Ryuichi Sakamoto, which is the godfather of electronic music.
Mm-hmm.
You have David Byrne from the Talking Heads, that fame, and traditional composer Kung Su. And they all did parts of the score for The Last Emperor.
Huh.
And it creates an aesthetic, though, but I think in this instance, having name recognition has people a little bit more open to receive something, like this, traditional Chinese sounding soundtrack.
You've given me some more music to listen to through the week. I don't know this film or this music. That I love the sound of that.
Talk about music being a character in the movie. That's you have it right.
That
here.
music has a sunshine personality to me. You can't help but to kind of smile when that violin comes in. It's like, oh, hello, welcome to this movie music
It
experience.
sets the stage.
You talk a lot about The Fisher King being your favorite film. Why does this movie music come to mind immediately when you're engaging that conversation with folks, using movie music to rope them into the getting used to that orchestral aesthetic or learning to appreciate it?
The idea of finding a name that they know
Oh, I
and
see what you're
saying,
saying.
and saying, well, if you like the Talking Heads, he worked on this with Ryuichi Sakamoto. And if you like techno music, electronic music,
Mm-hmm.
the people my age and up know the name Sakamoto. And
Right,
if they
okay.
hear that he worked on a soundtrack, they're going to go and buy it.
Okay. And I think even the aesthetic of that music in itself is user friendly enough to be something that folks can bite onto. It definitely sounds like the setting is Asia. The symphonic language, you have the drums, you have the marimbas in there, and then the violin. So it's not too dense, to take in, and at the same time, it's fully symphonic, and maybe even challenging the notion of orchestras looking as they do here in the United States and Western Europe, because you even have some of those Eastern instruments that I hear mixed in there as well.
It gives me the sensation that they were paying a lot of respect
Yeah.
as well, because there's moments where it feels like they've unearthed some new traditional piece,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
introduced something brand new that I don't know. I think that it just has a lot of staying power, and it's a character in the film.
Yeah, yeah. Anyway, those conversations at the party sort of inspired my second movement pick. I'm going to bring in some music written by an Italian film composer, a composer whose name I didn't know, but I wanted to make sure before we got there that the name Ennio Morricone
Mm.
is one that folks know. Maybe there are folks listening who aren't as familiar with the movie music outside of the John Williams and Danny Elfmans and those folks, but Ennio Morricone, I would say, really is at the head of this very specific but very interesting tradition in Western classical music of Italian people writing for American TV and
Hmm.
American film. It's where the idea of spaghetti Western comes from.
Nino Rota.
Yeah, Nino Rota, being at the head of that. But anyway, thinking about the Italian composer that I'm bringing into the second movement, I had to bring in Ennio Morricone. And over the week, I was listening to a little bit more of the music that he wrote for the film The Hateful Eight. Did you ever see that one?
I watched it with you.
Oh, did you? Oh, I've seen it. I love the film. I've seen it a lot.
You were shocked that I hadn't seen it, and you sat me down and had me watch it.
I mean, as much as our favorite film
Yeah.
director Tarantino loves that N word, he gets
Yeah.
on my nerves with
Yeah.
that. He needs to chill.
Yeah.
But he makes a really great film, and I thought The Hateful Eight was one of those. I went and saw it down in Knoxville back when it came out with my homie Sean. Shout out to Sean Horn with the Knoxville Symphony. And as soon as the film starts, we get this Ennio Morricone music. Something menacing is coming, very much in that Tarantino vibe. Lots of bassoons in here and contrabassoon, and a masterclass on playing the hi-hat on
Right,
top of everything. Incredible piece of music here. L'ultima diligenza di Red Rock by Ennio Morricone from the soundtrack to The Hateful Eight. I could let that play for a long time. I've always loved that hi-hat. As soon as we left seeing it in the theaters back when it came out, we had to go straight to a rehearsal. And I found myself playing that little motif. It's a good finger exercise on bassoon, you get your thumb workout. It's a way of playing long tones. And, just among the many examples of film music that really paint the picture within themselves. I feel like we think about film music maybe often enough, but we relegate the conversation to so few composers, I guess, as we do across the board in this orchestral field.
Yeah.
I just wanted to, make sure that Ennio Morricone was a name that folks know before I get into the Italian composer I'm going to talk about in the second movement. Before we jump in and get started with this opus, last week, Scott, I'm going to hold you to something that you said last week. So in the Triloquy, we were talking about ways to build solidarity between folks on polar opposites of the political spectrum, taking that idea of romanticizing America and finding pieces of music that fit into that narrative to not only shake out the Beethovens and the Mozarts of the concert hall, to center America and maybe find a point of connection between those of us, who they would call the woke crowd or whatever, trying to shift orchestral music. You have us in the room because Beethoven is being, put to the side, and the political sensibilities of America, fuck yeah, people are being affirmed through the programming.
Are you talking about going even harder right then? Because, I mean, there's a lot of conservative people in the audience already anyway.
Right. Okay. Say more. Sometimes I think we don't think about that. We think of a classical music audience being the, snobby upper crust. Oh, I have some money, so that must mean I'm a liberal artsy person. You're saying that's not necessarily who's in the crowd.
By just law of averages, you're going to have some conservative people in there. But no, I can't necessarily speak for the station that I'm in now, but stations that I've worked at before had very large conservative audiences simply by virtue of the state and city that I was in.
Sure.
So they're already going to be there. But I mean, if you want to bring in the younger crowd along with them, I'd put Metallica in front of it.
But let's not get too far away from,
which they've done.
What I gave you a week to ponder is taking that America first sort of attitude that many of us find problematic or a little worrisome, utilizing that toward decolonization, toward decentering European literature and centering some of that classic American, bald eagle sort of music, Aaron Copland, as a stepping stone toward the bigger conversation of really centering unique American aesthetics, starting with the European aesthetic as realized by these white men American composers who we can get, some political conservatives behind, not only toward decolonizing the space, but finding one modicum of commonality between communities that wouldn't typically have anything to agree on.
I think it's going to be difficult because the America fuck yeah people are going to look at an orchestra and say, look at all these pusillanimouses. What's the word? Oh, great. So now instead of the European plusanonymouses, we're going to hear American plusanonymouses? So, am I even using the right word?
I guess you're using that word to mean look at all of these snowflakes. Look at all of these whatevers. So there's no hope. There's no way for us to. And the only reason it's on my mind is because it just really stuck out to me when the FBI raided. This is not a political podcast, but when the FBI raided Mar-a-Lago, and you had some of those hard right, celebrities of the Republican Party saying abolish the FBI and all of this stuff. You had a lot of Black Lives Matter people saying, yes. Exactly. Here we are. So, of course, the energy was focused on their hypocrisy. Black Lives Matter saying, oh, see, y'all don't care now. But what if the focus could be, okay, let's just freeze this moment. We have some commonality here. Can we do something with that? That's what I'm thinking about, as it could apply potentially to orchestral spaces. We could take the idea of America, 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 find that orchestral repertoire and put it on the stages, and shifting Rachmaninoff and them to the side. And as we do that, Rachmaninoff died an American citizen, though. By the way,
that's true.
So there's that. But you get what I'm saying.
So they're going to find a way to get Rachmaninoff on a program. Is that what you're saying?
You said they're going to find a way, no matter what. Anyway, that's just me trying to build or think about what unity and solidarity could be. Just thought experimenting and traveling down rabbit holes, all in an effort to make classical music something that more people give a damn about. Let's get started. I'm Garrett McQueen.
I'm Scott Blankenship.
And this is Triloquy, Opus 162. Thank you so much for returning, to all of the returning listeners. When we get our Emmy, I think the theme, we need to be at a stage where the theme music is a little hard, because this theme music is really great. It gets me swooving. That's the word I'll use, swooving every time. But when we walk on that stage, because I'm going to have something to say. we need to have something a little,
Season 3. The season 3 theme keep going.
Or when we get to our next season, that's when we'll that's when the Emmys will see us.
I'm looking.
Okay, fine. Pulitzer, a Pulitzer Prize then. Yeah, go high. Oh, I accidentally hit the problematic button. Anyway, sorry. Thank you to returning listeners. If you are new, if this is your first time checking out the Triloquy podcast, Triloquy is a podcast that aims to broaden the circle around classical music. We take conversation, we take pieces of music, and all sorts of stuff that doesn't necessarily fit or hasn't traditionally fit into that paradigm of classical music, and we make it fit, all toward decolonizing the phrase classical music and everything surrounding it. For more information on the Triloquy podcast, you can visit triloquy.org. You can check out past opuses, donate there, and learn a little bit more about some of the folks who have made this show possible. In addition to all of your support, Triloquy is made possible in part by the Lakes Area Music Festival. More on them at lakesareamusic.org. Huge shout out to Springboard for the Arts here in St. Paul for your continued support. And once again, a huge thanks to each and every one of you who continue to make this show possible. We're going to check our accidentals and move into the first movement. We were on a very similar page this week when it comes to the classical news.
How could you miss?
And the happenings and goings on. I think we're going to start this week with a nice sharp, something positive happening in the world of the arts. I'm reading here from classicfm.com headline.
Again, this is from overseas.
Yep. They see what we're doing. And the headline here is Solange Knowles is driving a ballet revolution as young fans flock to buy tickets. Before I even get into any of this, in the content of this article, with the headline, Solange is driving Solange is driving a ballet revolution as young fans flock to buy tickets. So there must be something happening. So before we talk about what is being programmed, before we talk about who's on stage and the diversity of X, Y, and Z, Solange and ballet and people are buying tickets are in the same sentence, which means, okay, I need to buy a ticket. Mm-hmm. You see, it reminds me of when you're in a crowd and someone starts running and before long, everyone is running, but no one maybe knows why you're running. Right. That sort of name recognition is something that should not be slept on. Anyway, let me read a little bit here. It says Solange Knowles, singer-songwriter and sister of Beyonce, is making history with a new musical commission from the New York City Ballet. Her composition will be debuted at the Ballet Company's Fall Fashion Gala on the 28th of September, making Solange the third woman ever to have her work commissioned by the New York City Ballet and the second Black woman. When you read this and learned about this news, where did your mind go? What did you think?
First off, I want to say hats off to Classic FM for not starting off with a headline like Beyonce's sister Solange is having a ballet produced.
I'm reading straight from the thing I know I slipped up there and said Solange, but that must be, you have to tip your hat to Solange because it has to be a lot for your sister to be Beyonce. It just has to be a lot for you. And she has accomplished so much on her own that we don't even talk about. She was for years, she was the global brand ambassador for Puma, if you know that brand, like the shoes, and her music in itself is phenomenal. She's a great musician, a very creative musician, like a great vocalist, but someone who you can tell pays attention to some of the more compositional aspects of it. Anyway, you give it up to, Solange. Shout out to Solange. I've always been a fan out here.
So you asked the first thing that I thought when I read this. The first question was, what sort of collaboration between these sisters is there? Does Solange do features on Beyonce's work? Vice versa?
There has been some of that.
Okay, so you've already said that Renaissance is part one of a 3-part project.
I think that's what they're saying, yeah.
Okay, and then you said maybe she's going to give us a symphony.
Yeah, maybe Beyonce will give us a symphony, sure.
So do you think that there might be a little bit of foreshadowing here if maybe Beyonce showed up at a Solange ballet? I don't know.
Well, Beyonce is going to show up, but I'm sure the tickets were bought under, Pamela,
Jones.
Guggenheimer, or, like for folks that have no idea. But when it comes to the two sisters, I've always thought of Solange as the more bohemian, the more, again, not that she's more creative necessarily than Beyonce, but I'm saying like the creative TM, like the creative with a big C, like more of that, riding bikes around the city, in that sort of way. So writing for ballet just seems to be naturally what would come from Solange.
Hmm.
It's great. We love to see it. One of the first things that came to my mind, one of the struggles that I'm having in my work is really sitting down with the fact that a lot of decision makers in the arts, a lot of the gatekeepers see things that are quote unquote untraditional as a risk. If we don't
Yep.
insert what we've been putting on stage for 5-10 decades, if that doesn't make an appearance, we're risking sales or we're making some sort of risk. And I just don't see it that way because folks are rushing to the website to buy these tickets. It says here in the article, Solange's stardom saw tickets for the ballet selling at a speed often reserved for pop concerts as fans flocked to buy them. The website even implemented a virtual waiting room to avoid a crash due to the number of users at one time. So when a ballet company puts on, what are the most famous of ballets, Swan Lake
Hmm.
or Nutcracker, are they crashing the website? No, they aren't.
They
You can
probably
you can politely go to the website and buy your ticket for the Nutcracker, and everything is good. But the story was different when Solange's name is connected with a production. It's not a risk. It's an opportunity to reach out to these folks, to get the crowd that is going to rush to buy the tickets, and they have the revenue that far outweighs whatever other ballets. I shouldn't say whatever other ballets, but we can't pretend that this is just a normal part of the way that ballet companies operate, having to do virtual waiting rooms, and it's because of Solange.
That's what I wanted to ask you then. So how much is the name recognition playing into it? Because I was sitting here wondering, would people come and flock this way to a ballet if it was done by a Black woman whose name wasn't as readily
but still famous. I mean,
recognizable?
I think that's
Right.
a good question.
But then I sort of, my thought even changed in the moment that maybe this is the beginning of that. Maybe this is where we start to get more names other than Solange into
Right.
that household name status, right?
Well,
You
I
see where I'm
think
coming
it's
from?
yeah, I think it's more than name recognition because let's say Michelle Obama wrote a ballet. That would pick up a crowd as well. And of course also probably a sellout crowd, but that is a different culture being affirmed than Solange on the stage. So, of course, name recognition is a part of it. I think something that we can't take for granted is the culture recognition.
Hmm.
Folks know the name
Hmm.
Solange. They know the music. They know the success. They know the Knowles family. That's not something you typically see, and here we are. And even as here on this classic FM article, it's really something how Black Twitter really just creates and molds the culture, because even here on this classic FM, this European website has these Black tweets for people. This one says, "Not Solange about to have me buy tickets to the ballet just so I can hear the original score." Another tweet says, "Stop everything. Solange wrote a piece for the New York City Ballet Orchestra. What I was doing last year. I hope to get to experience it live." That's from the first one, the Black woman, Lino Pimienta, to put some music on the NYC ballet stage. Another one, "Who wants to take a trip to New York City with me to go see the ballet with Solange's score?" People are talking about flying to New York City. If I thought that there were some tickets left, I would go see about getting over there myself, but there probably aren't. I'll after we're done recording, maybe I'll take a look. Anyway, we got to get away from the idea of this sort of thing being risky, because you're going to get the patrons. You're going to get a completely different crowd, but you're going to get the patrons. There's always, of course, another way. You got to flip the coin around and look at the other side. Is it getting harder, or will this open the door for it to become harder for your non-celebrity composers now that, because of capitalism and other things, I imagine we'll have arts institutions saying, "Oh, well, that worked for them. Now we got to get Solange, or now we got to find the celebrity that's going to pull in the crowd in some way." I'm thinking about, shout out to Jesse Montgomery. There was a time when there were a lot of orchestras that wouldn't play her music. it started to catch on once one orchestra did it, and then two and three and four, and now her music is everywhere, and she's
Yeah.
one of the names that people recognize. Do you think that this aspiration to grab the celebrity composer will spread, like that wildfire in a similar way?
If this is the catalyst, great.
Yeah.
If that is something that she just wakes people up to the fact that there are people of color writing ballets of all sorts.
Yeah.
But you got to give her a couple months to come up with the next one. Okay, so in the meantime,
Sure.
let's listen to some by some of these other ladies.
Yeah.
Things like that.
That could be a thing if they have the
Okay.
courage to do that, because it seems like, when they schedule the Solange ballet, they see what the crowd looks like. Someone in the boardroom is going to be like, well, we're isolating.
Why are you
our
putting your finger
traditional
up like
audience,
that?
because that's how they will be raising their hand. We're isolating our traditional audience, so that's the justification to make sure that you have the Tchaikovsky ballet or whatever on the stage.
I would hold up my finger and say,
You'll
nobody's talking about getting rid of the Nutcracker. We're just adding to it.
Yeah, but I do think that's a question worth asking. It does seem like a slippery slope if we're looking at the big name celebrities to write these ballets. The emerging composers, the folks who hadn't quite had a chance, it's getting even harder for them, because now everybody's trying to get the ticket sales and get the big names in for the collaborations.
I think you're talking about an artist in residence sort of situation.
Mm-hmm.
What if she was brought in for a whole year to maybe produce 3 in total, and then help curate things around it with the staff that's already there at the New York Ballet? Something like that would be really cool.
And so I guess giving folks like Solange the freedom to curate means she'll make sure that there are other women composers, composers of color that are coming up and getting the opportunity.
And you can and why not try to get some of the audience that came to the Solange ballet to come over and catch your Les Sylphides or whatever classic ballet that you do.
So so now I'm in the meeting room, I'm in the boardroom,
yeah,
and to that idea I say, why? What's in it for them to go see insert name of traditional opera? What's in it for that audience? Why would they want to do that? Why does that have to be in the equation if at the end of the day we're just talking about the bottom line? That's the excuse when we talk about not putting certain things on stage, ticket sales. So now that you have the ticket sales, why put on the Tchaikovsky ballets at all?
Because there are still people out there that like the Tchaikovsky ballets.
So now all of a sudden we care about a particular audience group, and we'll make the financial part of the conversation secondary.
You said it, I didn't.
You see? No, but you see how quickly, when you really turn that on its head, you can see what the real problem is. We only talk about isolating audiences when we're talking about isolating the traditional audiences, dare I say the white audiences. That's not to draw a line in the sand, but that's just the fact of the matter. That's not me being ugly. I was talking about solidarity,
yeah,
and finding places to build bridges in the intro. So I'm not saying it to draw a schism. I'm just saying we're never thinking about Black communities in a city, in a community, when we talk about the fear of isolating audiences. That conversation only comes up when we're talking about the audience that these institutions already have.
Sure, and I don't think that there is anything wrong with showcasing classic art along with the new. I don't see any problem with still offering some of the classic ballets.
Okay, well, I guess coming to compromise, coming to the middle ground. Yes, fine. Let's keep the Tchaikovsky on the stage, but
it doesn't even have to be a Tchaikovsky.
But there has to be equal room for the innovative, and in the innovation of getting the big name celebrities commissioned to write these pieces, we have to remember that there are Black women composers writing ballets today who aren't as famous as Solange. Mm-hmm. And there are teams and staff members and consultants to pay to help identify those people so that we can keep this momentum going, normalizing Black women writing ballet. This is the third time that the second time it's already happened, third time for a woman at all. Let's normalize it. So the folks who come to that ballet for the first time to see Solange,
Yeah.
maybe next month they're like, oh, I've never heard of this black woman. Let's go see what she's talking about. And there you go. I don't like the idea of Solange being I'm thinking about Hansel and Gretel, the trail of candy, to get them to the Tchaikovsky, because at the end of the day, it should be the excuse is always to fill the seats, So if that really is what the conversation is, then let's do a Solange or Black Woman or whatever ballet every time. If we're, trying to serve different audiences and different communities, let's approach the conversation that way. But I think that we just have to rid ourselves of the idea that the traditional canon has to be in the conversation in any way, because it really doesn't have to. If the person only wants to come to the ballet to see the Solange ballet, that's all they want to see.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just that. And if you have the opportunity to do more of that for those communities, why not? Especially if the tickets sell, especially if you're maintaining your bottom line as an organization, And not that I want to center money and all this stuff, but that's just what it seems like the conversation comes down to when it's time to talk about innovation.
That's what the conversation is. The money is definitely in there. No shade.
Anyway, huge congratulations to Solange. Can't wait to hear the reviews, and who knows? Maybe I'll get to find my way into the New York City Ballet.
But they're doing it in May too, huh? Those are sold out as well.
I don't know. I haven't been on the website at all.
Okay. Well, according to this, shows are in October and May. So maybe.
Well, I suppose we'll see. Well, when it comes to Solange, everyone has their favorites. My favorite Solange composition is one called Losing You. The music video is beautiful. The melody is catchy. It has that really beautiful undertow of melancholy under it. Just one tiny example of the genius of Solange Knowles. Let's listen to a little of this to get us to our next accident. I think it's a really beautiful song. I don't listen to it a lot because it just reminds me of certain things.
I like that a lot.
But do you hear what I mean about that undertow of melancholy, especially for such an upbeat song? But then you have the beauty of the visuals. She's in South Africa. I think it was Johannesburg. And of course, folks in those communities are so excited to get dressed up and to be artistic. And anyway, that's what I mean by Solange being the creative, being the avant-garde, the person to really branch out and think outside of the box. So again, a New York City Ballet Commission just makes sense.
Congratulations to her.
Yeah, and shout out to Solange. I really can't wait. I hope I can make my way into one of those performances, maybe in May. All right, one more accidental. And what you think, Scott? We're going to give it this. And I think we need to give it a little bit of this as well, because one of classical music superstars. The story always, people love the rise, but what they love more than the rise
is the fall.
And if anybody fell, somebody fell this week, and his name is Plácido Domingo. How about you give us a little bit of this story?
This comes from the WashingtonPost.com. The headline, Plácido Domingo's days as a performer should be over. This is filed under Perspective by Michael Andor Brodeur.
Okay, so we love to just start by unpacking the titles a little bit. It did not say Plácido Domingo's days as a performer are over. It said something else. Why did the writer select that title? What are your ideas on the very intentional decision to say should be over as opposed to is over?
He's highlighting the fact that Plácido is very much engaged in various opera houses around Europe.
There are a few very lucky people listening to this podcast right now who do not know who Plácido Domingo is. And first of all, shout out to you. Let me give you a round of applause. But so for those people, Scott, who is this person? Why are we talking about Plácido Domingo? Why is he relevant?
This is one of these guys that has built a reputation as being one of these fine voices, one of these fine tenors. I believe he has performed in various makeups.
Go ahead. You say what
I'm
you
just
said.
saying
Go
it's
on.
there. There's pictures.
Sure. But it wasn't that, that got people talking about a
Right.
career that should be over, which is another part of the conversation. But anyway, go ahead and talk about this situation.
Right. So the reporter goes on to say here, Plácido Domingo, the disgraced 81-year-old operatic tenor, roundly exiled from opera circles in the United States for allegations of sexual harassment that spanned 3 decades, has now reportedly been linked by Argentine prosecutors to a criminal enterprise in Buenos Aires that included sex trafficking of minors.
It's easy for some people to say that we're just joining the bandwagon of throwing tomatoes and yelling shame at this person. But I think it's so important for people to understand that there are just evil things that happen in our world and happen within this world of Western classical music that we don't like to think about, that we may not even realize the extent to which they exist, but they exist. We're not talking about he was caught with somebody or there were accusations. We're talking about a criminal ring, that this man is tied to. We have to realize that is the depth to which these evils exist in our world and even touch the world of classical music.
So your question was, why should we care? Or we're just out to cancel this man? That's the question?
Yeah.
Because they have to be stopped. That's why. Because they have to be stopped. And you, as a listener who perhaps venerates this man, you need to know that his proximity to this music is not cover for any nefarious behind the scenes goings on. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Just because somebody works in classical music does not mean that they're this fine button down, do everything right sort.
Right.
There are creepy people everywhere, man.
And we have to be aware of that fact and not shocked when these people with all of these privileges and all of this access to all of these things, it gets uncovered. We did hear from Plácido Domingo. He had the opportunity to offer some words. Mm-hmm. And what did he do? What many people do in these situations: apologize, unapologize. What is it? What does it say there?
As for Domingo, he took the brave step of confronting his demons in public by posting to Facebook an apology that quickly morphed into a denial. My apology was sincere and heartfelt to any colleague that I have made feel uncomfortable or hurt in any manner by anything that I've said or done, he typed, setting up the twist. But I know what I have not done, and I'll deny it again. I've never behaved aggressively towards anyone, and I have never done anything to obstruct or hurt anyone's career in any way.
And of course, there are people for whom his fame and his whatever does not matter. I'm reading from the comments, of that apology that he posted on Facebook, that so-called apology. One of them here says, "Dear Maestro, wherever you sing, I will be there. I stand by you unconditionally because I believe what you say." Another one here says, "Maestro, to be your fan is an honor and a privilege. You taught me how to love opera wisely as a perfect combination of the beauty of music and the richness of human feelings contained in libretti." I can go on and read more. What is there to say about the fact that we have evidence that this very famous opera singer was tied up in this sex trafficking ring, and you have women here in the comments of that so-called apology saying, "We stand with you no matter what." It's like there's this, and I think we're going to get into this in the triloquy, but this respect of the idea of a person more than the respect of human lives who have been negatively impacted.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I see that. It's the veneration and turning a blind eye to the fact that they have some of the same issues, problems, demons as the person that are in your everyday life.
There is something to say as well about the writer of this Washington Post piece, because he has some ideas that he wasn't. He feels irritated too. Let me read a little bit here. It says, "On the international stage, Domingo has largely weathered the storm of consequence and remained an in-demand international star. But why? I can tell you right now. It's not his voice."
Yep. An understandably diminished instrument.
You know, what fire once lit up his voice is half supplied by the flame that lives in the listener's memory. Still, that strained nostalgia is valuable stuff. I think it's great, Scott, for once to see writers and I'm not saying that this person is the first one, and that is not necessarily uncommon in arts journalism, but it would be very easy for a writer to play soft shoe
Hmm.
in reporting on this issue, considering who it is. But this writer says, no, get him out of here. It's we're done. You're done. Pack up your bags and leave. It's good to see that sort of conviction and that standing up for those young women, even in the energy and the personality of this piece.
He says, how desperate and sad to see institutions pretend that Domingo is a legend instead of a man, that his artistic legacy must be preserved at the expense of their own integrity. Then again, that integrity needs to come from somewhere. Shade.
Of course, you know, the industry is going to industry when it comes to these things. One thing it lays out here, it says, as this article was written on August 18th. We're recording this on August 22nd, but it says, as of Thursday morning, Domingo was still on the calendars of Arena Monterrey in Monterrey, Mexico, Arena de Verona, the place we were talking about a couple weeks ago with the blackface, in addition to a few other venues. You brought up the other shamed, defamed, very famous opera person who got caught up in some other similar things, James Levine, and how he's still out here working and doing
Quietly.
gigs. What is there to be said about that? We have public evidence of this incredibly heinous activity from these men, and it's not a deal breaker for some of these for some of these venues, and less so for the audience members of those venues.
Creepy. I don't know. I don't get it.
It's like we hold up classical music, as an idea, at least, as this moral good for communities, and unobjectively vital to the human experience and all of these things. But you have this industry going along with rapists and with people who need to be locked up somewhere, and not singing on stage. It can be really discouraging. It's hard not to want to throw your hands up in the air at these institutions who just don't care that women are being harmed at the hands of these white men.
Would you like to read the last sentence of this perspective piece?
Go for it.
To the scrap heap.
And period. All right. Well, I'll have that in the description. I'll let y'all pass your own judgments. Again, just to reiterate, I'm very sensitive to jumping on news headline bandwagons and piling on to someone just for the sake of it. I don't see this as that. I see this as us facing the reality, one of the very important realities of our field. We can talk about all day Plácido Domingo and all of these other men who have been not only accused but proven guilty. I think the next step of that conversation is realizing that we aren't on the same page as an industry when it comes to sexual assault. There are audiences for whom that's not a big deal. There are whole ass institutions for whom that is not a big deal. I hope the institution that you work for thinks it's a big deal. Hopefully you won't have to be talking about Plácido Domingo anymore, playing any more of those recordings. Oh, but what good does that do? I can hear it, from the opposition right now. Well, it offers room to composers and performers and music creators who aren't rapists. Period.
That's number one.
It's as simple as that. All right. Well, I did want to pull out some positive from Argentina, since that's where this whole story exploded and where everything was found out. So I did a simple Google search and looked up, did a little bit of research on women composers from Argentina, and I found the name Maria Luisa Anido. Did you know that name or know her music? And that's the point. There will always be more people to learn, more people to offer space to, instead of repeatedly, beating these dead horses literally,
right,
to death and stuffing that down people's throats. There's too much stuff out there to discover. So this is a tune called Aire Norteño by Maria Luisa Anido, a solo guitar work. And you said you listened to this guitarist before. Are you familiar with this
Right. No,
musician?
she has a stream,
Okay.
on YouTube that I've tuned in and out of.
Yeah, her name is Cati Mayorga, performing Arie Norteño by Maria Luisa Anido to get us into the second movement of this week's opus. How'd she do there? What you think? What you think of that performance?
I love it. The fact that she's doing all of this with her eyes closed, number one, but it gives me hope that someone who has thin fingers like me can get a bar chord as firm as she was.
Well, I can also tell that she practices with her metronome.
Can you?
Yes.
You saying something without saying something?
I am. Mm-hmm. And we're here in the second movement where Scott and I are going to share with y'all some music that we've been spending some time with this week. Before, just real quick, it seems like guitar is one of those rememorizer instruments. It seems like a lot of pianists like to play from memory. And it seems like every time I see a really engaging guitar performance, the guitarist is playing from memory. It doesn't seem like the tradition is to just, look at the sheet music and do it that way. Maybe practicing the hand positions and how you're going to finger certain things just manifests in the piece being memorized by the time you really get good at playing it.
You just said it.
Huh.
Yep.
That's interesting.
Yeah, after you've gone through it enough times where you're trying to figure out the quickest way to get from one phrase to the next, and then you start worrying about musicality, because you're not looking at the page and you start emoting and things like that.
And look, I don't want to spend too much time here, but that's one of those conversations that we have in like the Western classical teaching things, or how to approach pedagogy. There are some people who are really against making students memorize things because that's not useful or whatever. For me, as I won't even speak to other people or students, for me personally, I feel like I'm not really playing a piece, or I really know a piece until it's memorized. So for me, memorizing a piece of music is a means toward practicing that piece of music more and becoming more familiar with it. And there's just nothing more free than playing a piece of music that you just know, as opposed to being worried, okay, I marked that F as a natural. Am I going to remember, so I don't know. For folks who in the deep world of practice and orchestral performance and stuff, something for you to, consider or offer me your thoughts on. I'm a fan of memorizing, even though that's not a part of the orchestral tradition. And sometimes it's difficult, but I've performed, I think 4 or 5 concertos memorized now. And I think it just would have been a different ball game if I had to sit there reading the piece of music. That would that would be something different anyway. But I'm sharing a recording this week. I'll go ahead and go first. A whole body of musicians who I'm sure were reading the music, but but offering something really incredible. So in the introduction, I mentioned Ennio Morricone as one of the many Italian composers to really make a name in the world of film, where there's another composer who I was listening to this week. His name is Piero Piccioni. The piece we're going to hear is called Il Monaco, from a film of the same name. I actually got onto this piece of music watching the show Atlanta by Donald Glover. Have you ever checked out any of that show or anything?
Sorry.
It's very provocative, very thought-provoking, but I would categorize it as Black surrealism. So taking Black experiences and just exploding it in this theatrical way. There's an episode where a character played by the late Kevin Samuels gives a surprise speech to the graduating senior class. And, he talks about the importance of this high school as an alum. And when I met your principal, I just knew I had to come speak. So out of gratitude for what this school has done for me, I'm going to pay for the full college tuition of the graduating class members who are Black.
So we did a Scott's Tots.
So of course you can imagine the tension that he created in that gym, you know. And so the episode is about a kid who has a black dad, but appears white, is white passing, and how, you know, this character played by Kevin Samuels denies him the scholarship in a rage over not being able to do this. And sorry to, you know, give away the episode or whatever, but in a rage, he puts together this flamethrower and is going to go burn down the school.
The kid builds a flamethrower.
Yeah.
Okay, so you did say it was surreal. All right.
Yeah. There's another kid
What?
who also didn't get a scholarship because he is not ADOS. He's Nigerian. And Kevin Samuels' character didn't give him a scholarship either because, you know, being black in America, all of that to say that these two kids show up to school with these flamethrowers out of rage to burn the school down. And of course, they end up trying to flame each other because that's just what would happen. So while this is happening, this tension of two kids, you know, on the verge of killing each other because of this divisive situation that somebody, you know, brought into the school, you have this piece of music, Il Monaco by Piero Piccioni playing. And it caught my attention. And it's been what I've been listening to this week. So, of course, this sort of music would easily find a place on a Halloween radio special
Right.
or some sort of orchestra pops or whatever. But sometimes I think we just ignore the different kind of beauty of music that sounds like that. It's easy to put it in context when, you know, you have something like two kids trying to flamethrow each other. But even in itself, to me, when I hear that type of music, I hear some really beautiful music. I hear some intriguing music that helps me think. And I don't know, it may not be what a lot of people are going to classical music to listen to, but I think it's something. What do you think about that? A little bit of music we heard.
I was just about to ask you, what was it that stuck out and made you come back to it?
It was just the way that the music impacted the scenery, you know, maybe
So you're
similar
talking
to
about with the visuals,
right,
how it,
right,
okay.
right. But then once you center in, because I had to, there's I forget the name of the website, but you know, if I just Googled the episode and the word composer, and it just listed all of the
Sure.
songs in the thing, you know. So I don't know. I think there's something to be said about a show like Atlanta reaching into the orchestral canon in that way to you know, add a little sauce to a scene with the hip hop we were talking about last week. You know, I mentioned that hip hop sees this sound, the symphonic sound, and those things. The converse doesn't necessarily happen all the time, or very rarely. I think this is another example of that. You have Donald Glover creating this black show and his team, you know, with the reach to understand the depth to which there's orchestral music that can feed the scenes, the visuals that they're creating. And, you know, yet another example for us to consider what the converse looks like. Black folks, black culture, American culture is reaching into the canon, reaching into the tradition. It's time for the tradition to reach to the community, reach to the people. I mean, and I can speak to that all day and then go into abstract thought, but at the end of it all, ultimately, this was a piece of music that caught my attention and one that I've enjoyed listening to.
And that the music was a character in the show
Exactly.
that you were watching.
Exactly. You know,
Interesting.
just and before I pass it on, you know, it also makes me think of the Bernard Herrmann. I think that's his name. What's it? The Psycho theme from
Sure.
Psycho.
Mhm.
You know, that we know the ching ching ching. We know
Right.
that part, but the piece of music is really incredible. And hearing that in context of 3/4 time and a conductor up there keeping it all together, it deserves more room beyond just Halloween or,
Mm.
or scary music time. If that's how we're introduced to it, through television and these things, so be it. But I'm here to leave some more room. So I encourage everyone, first and foremost, if you don't know again the name Ennio Morricone, check out some of his stuff. And then if you want to go even deeper into the Italian film music, I've been checking out music of Piero Piccioni. That one is called Il Monaco. That's my second ending for this week. What you got?
Well, speaking of music where a metronome wasn't involved in any way, I've brought in a piece of music. I don't know, this last week was really strange for me. I mean, I didn't leave the Danger Mouse and Black Thought one alone.
Yeah, me neither.
Cheat Codes was still in pretty heavy rotation.
Same.
But I have to say that I went to some other Danger Mouse releases and listened to that.
But you're not talking about them not having no metronome, not having no beat.
No,
Yeah.
no. What I was talking about is nothing was really making me stay. I felt like I was still grasping for something. Like I'm still, God, I mean, I feel like that right now that so many things are just at my fingertips.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like like if I could just get a little bit higher on my toes, I could reach it. Or I grab onto something and then it gets yanked away.
Sure.
And so I needed something that didn't have the familiar feel like the Black Thought release did, things that I didn't recognize. And quite frankly, I wasn't really sure where it was going to go. And so I went to Alan Hovhaness.
Sure. Yeah.
Armenian-American composer who writes, you use the word ethereal, and I think that's accurate. Debussy-esque in that it's just sort of, he just kind of puts all the thoughts out there. And
like an impressionist painting, how that looks, but music.
Right. But his second symphony, Mysterious Mountain, also goes along with, we're coming to the end of summer, and I'm seeing people posting their last trip of the summer season pictures. A buddy of mine recently had a career change, and he's based out of Aspen now, and he's sending me all these photos from the road of him driving out there. And Mysterious Mountain, for some reason, was working for me in that moment. And I liked the way that I didn't know when a change was coming or where the 1, 2, 3 happened. I liked the fact that I wasn't exactly sure when the next swell would subside. There's this quote from Hovhaness. He says, "Mountains are man's attempts to know God." And they call to me, and I haven't responded to the call for a couple of years now, and it's getting louder and louder.
The mountains calling to you?
They do.
We need to, you, me, and Dell, we'll get on an airplane and go to a mountain somewhere.
Yes, I'll have a direct flight to a mountain,
to the mountains,
please.
Yes, thank you. Yes, Comfort Plus if you have it. Thank you. No, what I was going to mention is that Alan Hovhaness is a Armenian American composer, but passed away back in 2000 in the city of Seattle. That was the Seattle Symphony we heard playing that, and I think there's a lot of examples of how Hovhaness had a local impact there, how he wasn't just the composer, with the single candle lit in his basement. He actually has some connection to the community and local musicians and that sort of thing. So it's really great to hear his legacy lived on and celebrated by the local orchestra there. I have to admit, I'm not typically in the mood for the really ethereal music. I like the one. I like
Sure.
I like a nice beat, but I do appreciate just the very cloudy nature of this music. It's been some intense couple weeks for me at work. I've basically had to decide that I have to wake up earlier and Monday through Thursday get a little less sleep than I would like. So when it is time for me to listen to some music, especially at the end of the day, maybe I have a little bit of a headache, or my eyes are strained. I had to buy some special blocker glasses, get some blue blocker, put on my glasses, because
That
looking at
works, huh?
the screen all day. Anyway, after all of that, it is nice to sometimes go back to that softer, and not softer in dynamic, but just softer in attitude. Just music that's more of a pillow to sit lay your head on. Here's a little bit of the end of this first movement of Hovhaness' Symphony Number 2, The Mysterious Mountain. And then if you really want to unpack some things and be a music nerd about it, the performance of it requires a type of sensitivity. You just can't put the instrument to your mouth and blow, or you can't just throw the bow on the string. Didn't I tell the strings to put the bow on the string a couple of weeks ago? Like, there's a sensitivity to it. And then in practicing that sensitivity, that approach to playing, there's a certain connection to life experience that I feel like a person needs. It's not just technique that allows one to create those, very soft, very delicate entrances and cutoffs. There's just life in that music. So yeah, it's great to return to Alan Hovhaness. I used to whenever I played his music on the radio, I would really lean into the fact that, he's Armenian American, because I know maybe not a lot, I know several Armenian American musicians and conductors specifically. So I would make those connections. You always have the grumpy people who are like, oh, well, why are you talking about that? Does it? All his music is what matters. But that's a culture and a part of the world that you don't think about every day. How many times do most people think about Armenia and that culture and that perspective? So I also think about that when it comes to the music of Alan Hovhaness, just allowing us to expand our world and think about a part of the world that we don't always think about.
Yeah, I usually think about him whenever one of his symphonies comes across.
Yeah, right. You see, but there's a whole culture and there's a whole set of stories and traditions that exist in this place that where Alan Hovhaness may be that bridge for us to be a little bit more curious and learn what their unique contributions to classical music have been, and how we can talk about decolonization in that context. Anyway, all these rabbit trails that you can get into talking about this music. But we're going to go ahead and get into the third movement. I'm really happy this week to feature my conversation with Maura Bosch. Maura is a Twin Cities-based composer who has started an organization, a salon, a consortium called the Waves Cafe.
Yeah.
So how this works is Maura has a space over in Minneapolis, books a certain amount of time with the help of her creative team, curates local artists, poets, musicians, composers, improvises them, and invites them to this space. But it's not a concert in that audience members can come in and out, can buy food or a coffee in the lobby, meet people and talk about what they're hearing. One of the things that Maura talks about is how restrictive that concert experience can be, and how sit down, be quiet, and only clap when we say so, can reverberate into, something that isn't necessarily celebratory of the musicians or what the today of music is. So she's created this new space, and she joined me here in studio last week to talk with me about it. One of the things that she mentioned in the interview is that there are musical experiences that she used to have as a younger person that she doesn't have often or can't have in traditional concert spaces, moments of excitement or feeling seen, through a piece of music. And an example that she gave was the first time she heard Alanis Morissette's "You Oughta Know." It's funny that came up because we were listening to that after we cut off the mics last week.
Sure.
So one of those classic compositions. You smirk. Is you something must come to mind when I
It's a,
mention that
it's
song.
a genuine grin.
Okay, so we're going to get into my conversation with the string quartet arrangement of it, the modern string quartet. They're good. They're good at that's their name. They're good about creating string quartets of all different sorts of things. In the Sound of 13, I think the first season I included their recording of "Feeling Good." When we
Mm.
think about Nina Simone,
Hmm.
well, they recorded a really cool rendition of Alanis Morissette's "You Oughta Know." So we'll get into that to lead me into our conversation, to lead y'all, sorry, into my conversation with Maura Bosch. Hope y'all enjoy.
When I compose, the one and only thing I go back to when I sit down to write music is I go back to um, experiences I had frequently as a young person, less frequently as an adult, and now only very occasionally, once every couple of years, of where you just hear something that you never heard before, and it's like, it's like you get chills. You don't know what it is, and that's the new, and that's the breaking of the status quo. I mean, I guess the status quo that's getting broken is my own internal sense of what music is, and then a piece comes along, and all of a sudden, it's like completely outside of the realm of anything I considered to be music before.
Mm. So, as much of a relationship you have with the nuance of these conversations of new music and composition, a concert space, as it were, is a place where a person would likely not see you or maybe never see you. I wonder if you could speak to that.
It's the kind of experience that I'm talking about hardly ever happens in concerts. Actually, when I was a kid, when it happened was listening to the radio,
Hmm.
and something would come on. Or still remember, I was already grown up at the time, but 1992 or whatever, You Oughta Know.
Alanis Morissette,
Yes,
yeah,
Alanis
I
Morissette.
love
And
that
it was
song.
like, oh my God, and it wasn't, yeah, it was the politics of the song and her tone and the angry female thing, but it was literally the notes and the voice and the sound of that piece that just blew me away. And so, and that happened in the car, driving around Lake Harriet. So it was,
Do you still have a relationship with radio as much as we critique concert spaces, concert halls? I think it's fair to critique some of the radio spaces in a similar
yeah,
way.
I've lost that connection with radio. So back in the early 90s, there was a couple stations where you could Rev 105 or something like that you could listen to,
Hmm.
and it would bring out, like the bands from Seattle and things like that you wouldn't hear anywhere else. I mean, we do have the Current here, and
Hmm.
it's just I'm just not listening to that now. Now I my family, we listen mostly on YouTube. So,
Okay.
and we would play YouTube tag. Although that stopped working a couple years ago. YouTube changed their algorithm of how they bring up the next thing.
Oh,
So it's
sure.
a lot less fun than it used to be a few years ago.
I
So
mean, we can talk all day about what isn't great in the arts field and what needs to change, but few people actually come up with solutions, or at least their own solutions. But you have. the Waves Cafe. I wonder if you'll tell folks what is the Waves Cafe.
Yeah. Well, the Waves Cafe is not really a cafe, but I spent some time in Amsterdam, and I was really loved that they had arts cafes, and there were a couple new music cafes. There were other cafes that were maybe more devoted to poetry or performance art or theater, but there were a number of really great new music cafes, and it would be, and I just loved. You would just go in there, and you'd have your cup of coffee and your Outsmiter, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, and then there would be something going on, music, in the stage, and you could go in and out, and you could listen to it. Another place that I was lucky enough to spend time at was my husband and I lived in Bath, England for a while, and there was a place called the Moles Club, and it was just a really cool progressive, rock club. But the early hours of the rock club were always devoted to what we would consider to be classical new music, and so that was really cool. And then they had a DJ that would just play music all over the place, just mixing Philip Glass with U2 and that kind of stuff. So
the Waves Cafe is the Minnesota version of.
Well, it could be. It's the Waves Cafe is a pop-up, monthly pop-up poetry and music cafe, and it is what it is largely because a space opened up in South Minneapolis that was crying out for some music, and nobody was bringing music to this. It's a new space that was open in a building called the Center for Performing Arts in South Minneapolis. No music, and I said, well, we got to get some music in there. And so we go in there once a month, and we rent multiple spaces in the building. And so one of the spaces is our stage for performance. And then there's a nice big lobby, and then you go up some stairs, and then there's a quote unquote cafe where so far we just sell drinks and pretzels, but we have a live stream of the performance in the cafe. And then what I want for people to feel free to move in and out of the concert. So we leave the doors open in the concert space to the lobby. And I want people to get up and move about and go up to the cafe and, have a soda or whatever and a pretzel and then come back and not feel tied to their seats. So
many of us are trained, maybe conditioned because of the concert space, as it were, to, want to be there at the beginning or feel like we need to be there at the beginning and stay to the very end, maybe out of respect for the performers. What's your response to that? Should we not be respecting all of the performers on a specific event?
The way we structure our programs is that the performers come and go throughout the program. And so most of our programs consist of solos and duos, and then people coming back in collaboration with different partners and throughout the show. So if you only came to the first half of the show, you would see everyone.
And is this programmed in advance, or can people just show up? Or
so I am posting the order of the program on the website a week ahead of time, and we're starting our first full season in September. And with the start of this season, we will be trying to make it we're organizing it slightly differently to make the audience feel more comfortable with this, free-flowing atmosphere.
Yeah. What is required of, or what do you encourage, maybe I should say, audience members to have in mind when they engage the Waves Cafe? They aren't in a typical concert setting. That goes for the culture of the space, but maybe also the actual art that they're engaging in the space.
We made a list of how we define a Waves event. and qualities of the waves event. And most of them are actually determined by the space, the physical space that we're working in. So a waves cafe is informal, it's intimate. The music, the program is unpredictable, and it's improvisatory. So it's kind of improvisatory overall, but then there's also a lot of, live improvisation going on. And then the two most important qualities that we have for this is that it's cross-disciplinary, so it's never limited to just music, and genre agnostic is our other very important value. And the cross-disciplinary part is that I feel that music has some problems that poetry does not have. And I don't know about the other art forms. I'll let some other artists speak for that. But music has some problems. Music has this, music has like a money problem. Music has, definitely has like a classical music problem. Poetry doesn't have that. Music, and because music is collaborative, and you don't have music unless you're actually making it in front of an audience. It's all this kind of social stuff comes into play, and so we're thinking that by mixing music and poetry, and so we do have poets reading, and then we have musicians playing, and then we also have musicians and poets performing together. We think that will help change the way people listen to music. So we like the way you listen to a poem is informing the way people listen to music, and the way people listen to music is informing the way people listen to a poem.
Yeah, that's really fascinating and really efficient at the same time, getting these different things at once and how they are complementary. It's not just a juxtaposition.
And I imagine it could be another art form besides poetry. Poetry is what we're doing with this first, time in the world with waves. So,
what does the curation process look like? How do you get the artists in the space?
The curation process is mainly Paula Chizevsky, Twin Cities poet, and myself, and then me along with Jeffrey Brooks, a composer who's my husband also, Haley Olson, who's on our board, and Jeff Johnson, and he's a guitarist and actually an old friend of my family, and so Haley, Jeff, and I are kind of like the utility players on the waves. So like whenever we have like space to fill up on a program, like Jeff will come out and do an improv with someone, or I'll get up and play the piano and do something. And same with Haley. And but then what each of us has done is we've just reached out to our friends and literally asked them. And then at this point, we do pay the musicians, but we try, and we pay them an honorarium, but we a respectful honorarium, but and we hope in the future to pay them more. But also we try to make it be just easy and fun. And what we're finding is that some musicians who don't need a stage, like they're doing very well, are finding that they like to be on waves. And what they like about waves is they like this improvisatory thing. They like collaborating with people that they haven't collaborated with before. So we had a couple months ago, we had Davu Seru on our concert, and I just called it a concert on our waves, and and he came and he played a solo, which was really cool because he doesn't get up and do solos too often. And then he did an improvisation with another person. And he's now, and, he doesn't need the money, he's not getting famous by playing on Waves, but he's coming back, not once, but twice this fall. So he's coming in October and November. And then and your question about how we get the musicians.
Right.
So Davu is suggesting different people that he wants to be paired with when he comes back. And so we're just like a little network of things going out into the community.
And for folks who don't know Davu, he also is a writer, a literary scholar in his own right. So, that sort of cross-pollination is really cool as well.
Yeah.
The Waves Cafe happens, you use the word intimate to describe it. Do you see it as a possibility to grow this concept in scale? Is a Waves Cafe with 300 people in the audience something that you ever aspire to, or is the intimate nature a part of what makes it so special?
The intimate part is very important. That what we aspire to is that this Waves is a prototype for something that I would like to see pop up in other cities, other communities. And so, for instance, all the musicians that I mentioned were local. And I can give you a little backstory here about that, which was it was 2001, and I was really depressed about composing. And I started a farmer's market in South Minneapolis, and it was the Kingfield Neighborhood Association Farmers Market. And I ran it for almost 10 years. And now it's massive. It's huge. But the concept of this market was that it was this little, neighborhood farmers market. The vendors were all local, and so there were farmers they were local people who were renting farm space out in different places outside the city. But but I learned so much from running that market. And one of the main things that I learned about the market was I took care of the vendors. I didn't worry about the customers. Like, I thought, all I need vendors, and I want to get the vendors to come, and I want them to feel good about being there. And so I made a lot of crazy efforts to make vendors feel good. Like, I would go over to someone's bakery and pick up a pile of bread and bring it over to the market to sell it for them because they couldn't spare the staff and things like that. But but once the vendors took hold, the whole thing just grew and grew and grew, and it became its own thing. So with the Waves, I feel like my job is to take care of the performers.
That's a very interesting approach, and I can't disagree with its viability or the successes that are attached to it. When I think about my involvement with participating in concerts by some of the big box ensembles, as I'll call them, it really matters to me what's on the program. So if there's a local artist, for example, I say the name Pavillon French a lot on my show. When she performs with one of the local orchestras, that's what gets me there. And that seems to, run contrary to this idea that the audience should be centric. It sounds like what you're saying is that by paying extra attention to what's being offered, the diverse audience, the intimate audience, whatever you're looking for, will come along.
Yes, and if anything, it's the complete opposite of the orchestra, where the mission of the orchestra is it's an educational institution. They're there to educate the public, and that's really weird to say. Like, my kids went to public school, and they had to be dragged to the orchestra to be educated, and so that and the mission of the waves is much more focused on having a space where people can create something new.
Mhm.
Is what so we're focused on the creators, in this case, the musicians and the poets.
So we talk about the Waves Cafe as this open space, this intimate space, this space free of certain status quo. That doesn't mean it's a neutral space. We fall into this trap oftentimes in the arts of thinking of these spaces as ones that should not include political or socioeconomic conversations or just contemporary culture. I wonder if you can speak to that. Does advocacy and activism have a place at the Waves Cafe?
It comes and goes.
Hmm.
So it's really the performers. So yes, some of our performers are very strongly political,
Mhm.
and some of them are less so. And um, you know, and then there's arguments that even if there's no words, all music is political.
Mm.
And because it takes place in a space, and so there's money involved. And how did that space come into existence? Or it's all political. And yes, so then some of the performers do wear their politics just right out in the open, and others less so. But if anything, I think that's been really cool for a number of reasons, where because you could have a piece that was very strongly political, and we've had a few of them on our show, um, eh, or several of our shows, right next to something that's just kind of dreamy and slow.
Mhm.
And so the juxtaposition becomes part of the message too. My husband Jeffrey Brooks just premiered a piece called The Steinocaster, The Art of Fugue. And so yes, it was totally, you would say it's not political.
Mhm.
It was like inspired by the Bach Art of Fugue, which is, but no, it was like radically political, because he took a giant piano and put a big giant pickup in it. That it wasn't literally a guitar pickup, but that's why it's called Steinocaster,
I see.
because it's the Steinway / Stratocaster.
Mhm.
But he put this pickup in it, and then he didn't play the keys. He played it with paintbrushes and other things and stuff. But that's political too, because it takes this, this icon, this big concert grand piano, and turns it on its head. And so all of it's political.
When it comes to this curation and, melding the political with the musical and those things, is there anything that you're specifically not looking for when it comes to programming and curating the Waves Cafe? Is anything not
Well,
welcome?
The simple thing we're not looking for is we're not looking for musicians to come in and read a score and play a piece by William Kraft or something
Mhm.
like that. In other words, even though that is quote unquote new music, we want creative musicians. So just like poets, are getting up and reading their poetry,
Mhm.
we want musicians to, we're not doing, it's not a concert is the main thing.
So I can't come with my Mozart concerto heard.
Well, maybe you could. I mean, so that's the other thing. Oh, yeah. So we had a violinist on our show a couple times, Ray Kurt Lemieux,
Mhm.
who just moved to the Twin Cities about a year and a half ago. And so a lot of people have been hearing him because he plays all over the place. And he puts together these medleys of classical pieces for violin. And it's great, and you sort of hear that in the context of the next piece on this show is some weirdo, electronic, sound wall.
Yeah.
And then there's Ray Kurt and playing strangers in paradise
Sure.
on the violin. So
Sure.
it's kind of great. I like it.
But even so, there's still that creative aspect
Yes,
that you're looking
totally.
for.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
You mentioned musician pay a little earlier. I want to loop back around to the money part of the conversation. It costs money to rent spaces and
Yeah.
to get musicians and all of these sorts of things. What is the Waves Cafe's approach to the financial part of running an organization? Is it very different than what the orchestras may do, or even some of the
Well,
chamber groups are doing?
it is really different from certainly it's very different from the orchestra, or it's very different from the Schubert Club, where they have massive expenses, and so we do not have massive expenses. So it's not totally free. We have to rent the space, and we want to pay the musicians, but our goal is to have this this be a big event online, as well as the live in-person event. And then because it's 12 a year and we can get people in, and then we are because we have the audience is spread out between the performance space and the cafe, that
Sure.
allows us to get people in the door. We only charge $10 for people because we say everyone can pay. But then people who have the means, we say, oh, can you pay more? And then one of the things that I got this from the Moles Club in England is that we're selling lifetime memberships to the Waves Cafe. So I haven't quite figured out how much, but at least $200.
Okay.
But so like almost anyone could afford it. But like having those kind of so then anytime they wanted to, they could show up at a Waves and not have to pay to get in. But
I mean, you can easily spend $200 for a single opera ticket or a single
I
orchestra.
know.
So,
I know.
it's good to hear about a lifetime membership that doesn't take a lifetime to pay off. Or So
Yeah.
you did mention the digital aspect, spreading the waves to audiences beyond who's just in the room. I wonder if you'll speak to that. What does it look like now, and what are your goals for creating a digital Waves
Yeah.
Cafe experience?
Yeah. So what it looks like right now is we have a YouTube channel where we post the stuff that we've shown. We have a live stream beginning with this September show. We're going to publish the link to the live stream so people all over the place can look at it, and then what I want it to grow beyond Minneapolis. I want it to have it in other sites. I have a great digital guy who's coming on board with the Waves, who's going to help me with this bigger thing of kind of digital distribution, and he does it. He does it actually for a couple other organizations in the country, and so we're just at the very early stages of this. But I'm working on trying to raise money specifically for boosting the online capability of it.
Well, as people across the country and around the world wait for that to grow and
Right.
get their access, I wonder if you could give the local folks maybe a taste or a preview of what's coming up with the Waves Cafe in the coming weeks and months.
Yeah, coming weeks. We do have a show on September 4th. And I know it's Labor Day weekend, but get used to it. Our shows are the first Sunday of each month. It's in South Minneapolis at the Center for Performing Arts, 3754 Pleasant Avenue. In this September, we're going to have two of our special guests are Nitu Chango, who's a percussionist from Mozambique and really cool, wonderful guy. We're going to have a little pocket percussion trio. We're going to have Mike Ethan, electric guitarist, and Jeff Johnson. And in October, we've got we have poets too all over the place. Paula Chizevsky, Michael Torres, Catherine Rauch, Haley Lachey, Rachel Moritz are a few of the ones coming in the next couple of months. I mentioned Davu is going to be there in October and November. George Cartwright is coming to perform with Davu on one of those nights. We have a wind player, Pat O'Keefe, who's coming several times, a pianist, Ellen Leese. Some people might know from the jazz scene around here. And quite a few more. George Farah, poet, Roy Guzman, poet, and quite a few people. And yeah, the website is being updated with all of these people as they are getting confirmed.
Yep.
So,
and that website is thewavescafe.com.
yes.
So to sort of tie a bow on our conversation, I wanted to give people an audio sample of what happens at the Waves Cafe. And the performance that grabbed my attention the most is actually a collaboration between yourself and the poet Paula Chizevsky. I wonder if you'll offer some context about what we're about to hear. What's the music and what's the poetry and how they came together to complement each other?
Yeah. Well, the music is an excerpt from 5 nocturnes for solo piano that I wrote relatively recently. And Paula showed up with this poem. And this was in early July. And it was 10 days after the Supreme Court came down with the decision about abortion. And the poem is actually not Paula's own. She's reading a poem by someone else. The poem is called An Abortion Ban.
Yeah. Maya Marshall.
Yeah, thank you for getting that. And Paula sent me the poem, and she said, "Well, just given what's going on in the world, I have to read this tonight." And so I knew exactly what part of my nocturnes I was going to use for it. And actually, the nocturne has a very striking title in itself, which is "The Passion of Suicides Who Kill Themselves Without Explanation." So that's from another poem. So yeah, it was, anyway, we were all, felt like we had been hit in the stomachs. But it was really great that Paula showed up with this piece of poetry to give to us all.
An abortion ban is a body snatcher, is an ethnic cleansing. The uterus is a cave, is an incubator, is a vault, is a self-destructing bomb, is a thoroughfare. Semen is an innocent bystander. Penises are just boys being. A woman is a vestibule. A judge is a strict father. Is Joseph awed by his father's creation? Is Joseph relieved of fault? Is Joseph saving face? A woman is a support beam. A girl is a receptacle. A fetus without lungs is an unlucky horseshoe. A fetus in a homeless woman is an empty pillowcase. An embryo is a fingernail. A fetus is a jail. A woman who miscarries is a quarterback, executed, point blank. A woman with a felony is insulation.
Let me say first that this sort of presentation is among my favorite ways to do performance. Cabaret style or salon style, like you were talking about. There is, it's not 100% things that are memorized, but you know it well enough that you can, there's a comfort level with it, but still some spontaneity to all the pieces, and the ability to talk with the artist after the performance provides another layer of intimacy, right? This reminds me of Theater of the Oppressed, speaking directly to the issues where even the audience members become a part of the show.
Right.
Love it.
Right.
And this is a great way to have a meaningful impact on issues, just like you're hearing. directly, and
Mm-hmm.
you get to see the impact directly.
Yep. So if you're here in the Twin Cities, that gets kicked off. The season starts September 8th, I believe. The date is, you can get more information at thewaves.com. One of the bigger projects that Maura is working on is getting these performances put together for a radio program that I'm thinking, we're talking about me hosting it, or, just doing some production help, but, just filling the media spaces as well with examples of what, I'll use the word decolonize art spaces look like and what they sound like, and how we can engage audiences and engage narratives by opening up the door to that. All right, well, we have a little bit of a fourth movement, a little bit of a triloquy this week, and it centers the music of Beethoven, as everything else tends to in this world of Western art music. But anyway, we're going to listen to the end of Beethoven's Choral Fantasy to get us into the fourth movement. Let's take a listen to this. The end of the Choral Fantasy by Beethoven there. That was the Singapore Symphony performing it. It's very grand music, before we talk about the issue at hand, just when it comes to Beethoven, this composer that we do so much shitting on, The music is grand, the music is enjoyable, and it's incredible. It would be really great to be in that hall and hearing all of those vibrations and the intensity of that music live. So these conversations aren't about discrediting the beauty and the genius of Beethoven's music, but that there's more out there than just that. But that's not what this is about. I brought up the Beethoven because the Philadelphia Orchestra is over in Europe trying to perform some Beethoven, but they're running into some snags. This is a headline from the Philadelphia Inquirer. Philadelphia Orchestra to chorus. Put on masks. Chorus to orchestra. We're out of here. None of us like to, well, I won't say none of us like to wear masks, because I like to have my mask on, especially in the store. I don't have to fix my face. I can also understand when it comes to certain things, when I do chanting, for example, and I'm chanting with a group of people, or maybe at the center, wearing that mask can be a little bit annoying. Your face gets hot and then you're trying to speak a little louder so that you're in the mic. Yes, fine. But we still have COVID out here. That's a thing, and we have to adjust. Let me read just a little bit of this. It says, the Philadelphia Orchestra is used to drawing attention for its European tours, and is once again, though not this time, for its silken sound. The orchestra kicked up a choral kerfuffle before even landing in Europe by asking the Edinburgh Festival Chorus to wear face masks for Thursday's Beethoven Symphony No. 9 performance. The chorus balked. The Beethoven was pulled. What do you think?
This is the number one reason you're never going to get a concert going with one of these hard right America fuck yeah people.
Okay.
Because you're going to be in a mask, and they're going to be going, "Well, you plus anonymous. You're just wearing a mask."
I'm reading here from the article. There's a quote here. What's paramount for us, and this is the CEO of the Saratoga Performing Arts Center. What's paramount for us is that the musicians on stage are safe, and really the only way to do that is to ensure that people are masked unless they play a wind instrument. And we were concerned at the start of a European tour where the Philadelphia Orchestra is embarking on its first post-COVID international trip to some of the most beautiful and prestigious venues in Europe, that everyone stay healthy throughout the tour. We love to, superimpose politics on this conversation, but I don't think that that's a farce. I don't think that's the so-called Miss America answer to say we're trying to make sure everyone is safe. I think that is an actual concern. why not ask people to wear masks? What was the quote that we pulled out of here? Somebody said it was absolute potty or
Absolute
something.
potty. Yep.
That they would be expected to wear masks. I don't know. We have Yannick on the podium.
Mhm.
We love talking about Yannick. He has a lot of wins. Would you feel discouraged if you were counting on collaborating with these folks? Maybe you want to get strengthened ties between local English cultures and that sort of thing. And now we're arguing about masks. What do you think might be some of the energy or conversation around this when it comes to the future of live performance?
I'm saying this is the future of live performance. Get ready for your programs to be all screwed up. Get ready for something that you're planning on not being there. Because as we have more people saying, look, this Panera isn't over, and the others are going to be forced, this is just going to happen.
Yeah. I think new requirements and a new reality should open up the door to new music, or at least new ways to perform and engage this music. Again, I feel like we were saying this about Plácido Domingo, and I definitely think it applies here. It's the idea of a person. It's the idea of Beethoven, the idea of prestige that is being foregrounded above people's health and potential safety. It's a really dark spot on classical music, on the genre, on the tradition, for people to raise a stink and not care about human life as much as they care about, but this is Beethoven, and how dare you ask us to put on masks to perform this music?
Well, why don't you tell everybody what piece got put in place of Beethoven 9? Beethoven 5.
Something with no choir. And
So
this podcast is called Triloquy, right? Orchestras will have something to play. Orchestras will figure it out if y'all don't want to act right, I think that's neither here nor there, because I'm not trying to be divisive, but the show must go on and the show will go on. I feel like they threw the baby out with the bathwater, and they make the masks that have more face room so that you don't feel like, your everything is bouncing right back at you. Something could have been done. It feels like there's something more than just, we're uncomfortable with wearing masks, because a way could have been made. This is my other thing. Edinburgh. If it wasn't some American orchestra coming over here trying to play our repertoire, let's say it was the Royal Philharmonic, and it's time to sing Beethoven's Choral Fantasy or perform Beethoven 9 for Queen Elizabeth herself, and to keep the Queen safe and healthy, y'all have to wear masks. Scott Blankenship, do you think the reaction would be the same? Do you think the choir would say, no, we're not singing for the Queen and mass, we're leaving? Or would they put on that damn mask and do what they're supposed to do?
Is it their orchestra? Then yes, they would. You said the Royal Philharmonic?
Right.
Yeah, they would be masked up.
So I think that has to be considered as well. I don't think it's a reach to put that into the cake mix.
And instead, on a certain classical music blog, one of the comments was, cancel the Philistines. Right? No, wait. Cancel the Philadelphians from appearing and send them back to America to ruminate on their decisions. Quite.
But you know what? If we would focus on our music and our traditions and not work so hard at venerating the colonized view of classical music, they would be over here engaging some audiences like Solange is about to, instead of putting on those ties and try to please all of these. Okay, see, I almost got problematic.
I know.
I was gonna say tea drinkers. Is that bad? But again, you can't ignore that sort of, we're the originators of this. Look at y'all. So the way that England is looking down on y'all and throwing away y'all's mass requirement, that's the way. Even if you don't realize it, that you're looking down on the American tradition, on traditions that could engage more audiences, and traditions ultimately that actually are classical from that American context, but you're looking down on all of that by censoring the same repertoire, these same composers, and these same ways of doing it all. Again, I said back in January, 2022 for me is about unity, about leading with compassion. So thoughts and prayers to the Edinburgh Choir and to the Philadelphia Orchestra. Yannick is out here doing his best. We talk about him all the time. Anytime somebody's being equitable, Yannick somehow is in the room.
Right.
And y'all are just making it hard out here for this man. So let's think about our compassion before we just blindly go to bat for a world famous opera singer because he's a world famous opera singer. Let's think about the human lives that he impacted before we say, oh no, it's pure potty. Or what was it, pure potty that was said? It's pure potty for us to have to sing in mass. Well, maybe foreground and consider the human lives that could potentially be harmed by your singing and spitting and salivating all over them to sing Ode to Joy for the cajillionth time, something that we can all sing along with you because we've heard it so many times. Let's foreground human life. Let's try to lead with that compassion. Let's try to build bridges everywhere we can. Again, I'm talking about trying to get the, find ways that we can even align with political conservatives. If we can all just spend much more of our time figuring out how to do that and do that within the arts, I think we'll have an arts sector that more of us can stomach and, that won't get any of us sick because we're wearing our masks, we're being polite, and we're, enjoying the new along with the not so new. We can paint a beautiful picture, can't we? But the reality is so different.
The absolute potty of it.
Thank y'all, everybody. We'll see you next week.